Why don't you go ahead and admit people? And we'll officially kick off at 1 o'clock, but this is kind of like the green room pre-presentation experience. So we got a bunch of people joining. Oh, good. I see my friend Karen is joining. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm Rodney Paul, coming to you from Salt Lake City, of all places, the public library in Salt Lake City. I am joined by Siobhan Fleming, who is a guide for San Francisco City Guides, and you do the Mission Murals tour, which some of this content kind of comes from that. Siobhan, when are those tours offered? When could people jump on one of your in-person tours?
Yeah, the in-person tours are Saturday mornings at 10. We are most Saturday mornings, I would say maybe at least three per month. But check the City Guides website, cityguides.org, and you can find the exact schedule. And the tour lasts about 2 hours, and you see maybe about 40 different murals during those 2 hours.
Yeah, and as people are going to learn on this program, you just have a wealth of information. There's a lot of backstories. You know, these murals, like the one behind me, they're really interesting to look at without knowing those backstories. But you can add to such a whole new layer of understanding, talking about where they came from, who these people are we're looking at. We're going to meet some of these people in the murals.
Yeah, I mean, the murals really are, have a message. They're trying to say something to you. And I think they're just more meaningful when you know the story behind them. And we're going to talk about a lot of backstories, so you get to kind of see them in a deeper way.
And we talk about the backstory, and Nikki, we're going to be talking about your own personal relationship to one of the murals when we get into the show. But you want to tell us a little bit about that now, Nikki?
Oh, well, yes. My kids were involved with Procita Eyes when they were young teenagers in 2000, and they got to participate in the restoration of the very famous mural at 24th and Harrison on the side of the little meat market there, the carniceria, and it still is there. I go by and visit it all the time, and my son continued on with Mural Eyes until he passed away in 2009.
Well, we'll talk a little more about that. I think, are we actually at we're at 1 o'clock. It's funny because I'm in Salt Lake City and it says 2 o'clock. So I've had to keep that straight. I'm glad I didn't screw that up. So welcome to Art Viewing Adventures. Many of you know that I'm kind of on a road trip right now, but I did not want that to interfere with our program, which we love doing. And I'm joined by one of my fellow San Francisco City Guides, Siobhan Fleming. How are you doing today, Siobhan?
Doing great, thanks. Looking forward to this presentation.
And of course, we've got Nikki from Community Living Campaign. Nikki, why don't you kick us off officially and tell us about Community Living Campaign?
All right. Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope it's going to be a great day for everyone. And I'm real excited about bringing Procita Eyes to the Community Living Campaign, because they have been a big part of the mission and the art movement for many, many years, since probably the late 60s, the 70s. Procita Eyes, I think, started in the late 70s. And the funny thing about Procita Eyes is that maybe years ago, those of you that lived here in the early 80s might remember Guadalajara de Noche, which is the site of Procita Eyes. And it was a very popular Mexican restaurant that had salsa dancing every Friday and Saturday night. But anyway, let me get back to the Community Living Campaign. We're a nonprofit in San Francisco. We support seniors and people with disabilities. We do a lot of programming that involves exercise, creativity, writing, and then we also do a lot of informationals of bringing important information to people in this generation that is, vital for their health and their well-being. So look into our website and the events section, and you'll see that almost every day we have Zoom activities going on. Some are in person. And the one thing I want to emphasize is that we do a lot to support seniors and disabled people in tech. So if you're kind of reluctant to get into tech, or, oh, that iPad's too complicated or whatever, we will help people with that step by step. in a way that's comfortable and friendly. So, you know, keep us in mind when you're getting stuck in the technological maze. Okay. But anyhow, it's going to be a great day. I have some things to contribute today from my own family experience and being born and living in San Francisco. So that it's going to be really a fun presentation. Thanks, Rodney, and Siobhan, thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Yeah, so again, Rodney Paul here, and we're going to be talking about the Procita Eyes murals and other murals in the Mission District. And these are all, many of them are covered on the Mission Mural tour that Siobhan is part of with City Guides. And Siobhan, you've been doing that for a long time, right?
I did. I started doing mural tours back in 1999. So yeah, I've seen a lot of murals come and go, and it still is really interesting for me. So I would love to have people come and learn more of the backstory for the murals.
Great. Well, why don't you go ahead and kick us off, and then Nikki, I know at some point we want to loop you in and have you tell your personal relation to these murals. And you know, there's so many layers of meaning to these things. So Siobhan, why don't you go ahead and share your PowerPoint with,
Okay.
and you've got lots of images for us to see.
Yeah.
And I'll just tell everyone out there, I'm actually coming to you from the Public Library in Salt Lake City, which is a beautiful, I mean, we talk about art, this is a beautifully architected library. I would say definitely worth a visit sometime.
Okay, I think we're here. All right, so I'm going to get started. So I want to thank you for having me, Nikki and Rodney. I want to welcome everyone to this Mission Mural Tour. Really excited to talk about the murals and give you some more messages and information about them. So I'm going to start the presentation off by doing kind of a quick history of murals, and then we're going to take a look at 10 different murals that you can find in the Mission District. And Rodney, if it's okay, people are free to ask questions if they want to put that in the chat. And then there'll be time at the end as well for question and answers.
Yeah, I'll be monitoring chat. So go ahead and put your, put your questions in there, your thoughts, and I will be happy to read them to you for you. And if you want to interject something, just raise your hand. We'll call on you. We'd be happy to have you voice your own thoughts. But I think we're going to generally stop at various points and address those things, right, Siobhan?
I think that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, great. So take it away.
Okay, here we go. So a little introduction to murals. So, most people understand that a mural is a painting on the wall, but let's take a minute or so to go a bit deeper. So murals have been described as walls with tongues. So they are walls with messages, and they're talking about things like culture, history, identity, pride, and struggle. Murals have also been described as art galleries of the street. So they are public art. They're open 24/7 and accessible to everyone. And murals have also been described as mirrors of the community. So they're speaking both to the community and about the community. And this idea of community is really important with the murals that you'll see in the Mission. There's a lot of collaboration and cooperation between the artists and the community members. And that's great because that allows these paintings to be respected within the community. A little early history of murals. So murals have been around since the beginning of human time, right? We see examples in prehistoric time all the way up into present day. And murals have also been found in many different ancient cultures. So the ancient Egyptians and ancient cultures in Mexico and India and China, et cetera, et cetera. So there's something that is both universal and primal. And I'm going to use my little pointer here. We're going to just point out two examples of ancient murals. The first here on the left is the Lascaux Caves in France, dated to be about 20,000 years old. Then moving to the right, we have some murals that are dated to be 44,000 years old from the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit and look at murals in the 20th century in the United States. and talk about how that was a really important century for murals to take off in our country. So the first really important influence happening in the 1930s and 1940s in the United States actually came from the country of Mexico. And at that time, there were three great Mexican muralists. They were known as Los Tres Grandes, or the three big ones, the three great ones. And we have them here, Jose Clemente Orozco, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and probably the most famous of the three here is Diego Rivera. So all three of these muralists came to the United States. They painted, they trained American muralists, they gave lectures, et cetera, and really pushed murals forward. And probably their biggest legacy was this connection between public art and political commitment. And we're lucky in San Francisco because we have three Diego Rivera murals, but I just wanted to highlight this mural here. This is Rivera's 1940 Pan American Unity mural. And this mural for a long time was out at City College, but was moved last summer to SF MoMA. And it is now showcased in their free gallery. And I really encourage anyone in the Bay Area or San Francisco to get over there and see it. It's a tremendous fresco. It's 22 feet high and 74 feet long. And again, it's in their free gallery. You can pop in and take a look at it.
Yes, Siobhan, I'll just chime in and say, that we have we had two programs that we did on this mural with Will Minez, and I'll put links to those. They're on YouTube. I'll put a link to those in chat.
Awesome, great, thank you. Okay, just another important influence on American murals, also happening in the 30s and 40s, actually came from the United States government. And so at this time, think of the United States in the 30s, in the middle of the Great Depression. It was very hard for people to find work and to feed their families. And so the US government established a program called the Works Progress Administration, also known as the WPA. And so this program built up America's infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, et cetera. But part of this program was called the Federal Art Project. And this project employed artists who also at the time weren't able to have any work. And so the government paid for artists to put up murals and photographs and paintings, et cetera, in public buildings across the US. So for example, we had thousands of WPA murals going across the country. And this was wonderful for murals in the United States because muralists were paid to continue their work. They were also allowed to collaborate with one another. And it also really put murals in the public view because these murals were done in places such as post offices, schools, courthouses, etc. And so murals became more accepted in the public. And I have two examples of WPA murals here. Again, in San Francisco, we're really lucky because we have a lot of great WPA art. The first example of a WPA related art is at the famous Coit Tower. And these murals were technically not a WPA project, but they were a pilot project. And because they were successful, they were extended, murals were extended to other parts of the country. Another great WPA mural, these murals are out at the Beach Chalet by the Pacific Ocean. Again, paid for by the US government. Now we're gonna fast forward a couple more decades and talk about murals in the 1960s and 70s. And this was a really key time for murals as well. It was a time of great social change in the United States. We had the civil rights movement, anti-war protests, the women's movement, gay rights movement. And it was a time for people to really celebrate and investigate their ethnic heritage and pride. And so at that time, murals became a way for people to speak not only with their frustrations about what was going on in society, but also their aspirations for the future. And so murals at this time in the 60s and 70s moved to the streets because primarily murals had been indoors, but now murals became street murals so that the artists could communicate more directly with the public. And now we're kind of zeroing in on the Mission District today. So this has traditionally been a neighborhood of immigrants up until the 1930s. That was primarily European immigrants. But today it is the center of Spanish-speaking San Francisco. And 40% of the residents have Latino or Latinx heritage. And this was due to a couple of changes. In the 1950s, there was a change in immigration law. So a lot of agricultural workers from Mexico were allowed to stay. And also a lot of Central American countries were having civil wars, starting in kind of the 1960s through the 1990s in places such as El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Honduras. And so these countries had a lot of refugees fleeing and coming to the United States and coming and settling in the Mission District. So I think it's really important to remember that Latinx heritage when we're looking at some of the backstory of these murals. Okay, and here's a little map of where we're going today. We're going to look at 2 murals here in Procita Park, and then we are going to pass Garfield Square, and we're going to end up in this little back street called Balmy Alley. And Balmy Alley is parallel to Harrison Street and Treat Street, and then it's bordered by 24th right here and 25th. So this little alleyway is, it's kind of the people's garages, the back of their homes, etc. They're all private property, decorated with dozens of different beautiful murals. And we're going to discuss probably about 5 different themes today: celebrating family and community, war and peace in Central America, memorial murals, Latino pride and history, and contemporary social concerns. So let's talk about our first theme and look at our first mural. And this is celebrating family and community. And so our very first mural here is called, we have the title at the top, it's The Community Spirit and the Legacy of Procita Eyes, completed in 2020. This was done by Procita Eyes. 20 different artists worked on this. And I wanted to explain a little bit about Procita Eyes. So Procita Eyes is a local mural arts and education organization. They were founded in 1977 by Susan Cervantes and her husband, Luis Cervantes. And they have done dozens of murals in San Francisco. They've also done murals nationally and internationally as well. They're probably the most important mural organization here in San Francisco. So this first mural that we're going to look at actually highlights Procita Eyes. And this building here is the original headquarters of Procita Eyes. And about 5 years ago, this building was up for sale, but Procita Eyes was able to rally the community to do fundraisers. They also tapped economic help from the Mission Economic Development Agency, and they were able to fundraise and purchase the building so they can now maintain this property as one of their original headquarters. So this mural is almost like a celebration of that. So we're going to look at the 2 sides of this mural and dig into the details. So I'm going to use this little function. It's like a magnifying glass, so we can go in closer. So here is, let's see. There we go. So here is the storefront of Procita Eyes. And up here we see the logo. It's this eye with multicolored iris and then surrounded by this flame. So we're going to see that a couple times this afternoon. And so if we move over to the other side of the building, we have this paintbrush being held by children. And there's this flame coming out of the paintbrush. And that symbolizes the passion to create art. And then here we have 3 other children, and they are painting the Procita Eyes logo. And Procita Eyes, that's probably one of their most important legacy, is to train kids and teenagers, and not only with doing murals, but also art in general, and how they're really able to awakening kids' imagination and creativity. Yes.
Do you think I could talk a little bit about my son's experience with Procita Eyes?
Of course, yeah, of course, go ahead.
All right, let me get my camera going. I think Rodney can help me with that. So I wanted to tell you about my son, AJ Tresvenia, my son, Nick Tresvenia. When they were kids, about 12 years old, in 2000, they participated in one of the programs. And I don't know if you can see this on my, well, maybe I can just hold
Yeah,
it.
we can.
Oh, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a
I can
picture of the mural that they worked on that still sits there at 24th and Harrison on the corner of the little meat market. And it's a famous mural in Mexico. If you look at the mountains closely, it looks like an Aztec holding the Aztec princess in his arms. And it's a duplication of the Romeo and Juliet story. And the kids painted the little birds and the little snakes and the little doodads there in the corner. And there's about 10 kids that my kids' names are down there at the bottom. But this was a really important thing for my son AJ, who really enjoyed art. I'm going to go in the other room so you can see some of his artwork. Procita eyes became a big part of his life, you know, and is this working, Rodney? Can you see? One of my cameras working or not?
We're not hearing Nikki real well, but we are seeing the art that she's showing us from her son AJ.
Okay, well, yeah.
That is so beautiful, Rodney.
Yeah.
He did a lot of artwork. He was really active with Procita Eyes. And then he passed away in 2009. And Suaro, who is the son of Susana Cervantes, did this picture for him. And it's got all these different symbols about AJ since 88. That's the year he was born. And it had his tag because he was very into graffiti. And I don't know if you can see this picture, but that's AJ and me celebrating his 25th birthday. And he also did political work. He made us we made them into postcards, but he had made these very large posters for us that were used at some of the protests for higher ed at City College and San Francisco State. So Procita Eyes has always meant a great deal to me because of my son AJ. And also, when I was younger, in my youth, I'm going to turn off this microphone.
Yeah, you're a little echoey at this point. So now you're muted. So unmute this guy here.
See.
There you go.
Thank you. So in my youth, living in the Mission, I lived on, it was Army Street then, which of course we now know as Cesar Chavez. And there was a bar and a restaurant called Guadalajara de Noche. And every Friday and Saturday, the place was packed with people going to go salsa dancing. So later on it sold and it became Procita Eyes. So it's really funny how I spent my youth there. And then my son AJ ended up in the same site as Procita Eyes. So anyway, I just wanted to just say that because I have a great appreciation for Procita Eyes and how it impacted my son and helped him through, you know, some tough times.
Well, thanks for telling us about that, Nikki. I think that really adds to our understanding of this. So Siobhan, why don't you continue telling us about this?
Thanks for sharing that, Nikki. I think it really hits home that idea of Procita Eyes has a legacy in the neighborhood. This really meant a lot to a lot of families and a lot of kids, even today. So we're going to continue to look at this mural. And we kind of have these beautiful butterflies that you'll see. These are the monarchs, the orange butterflies going up here. And then I wanted to go back and focus in on this section here. This is the only way you can see kind of the corner of the building. And this monarch butterfly is pictured here on this Chichen Itza, which is a site of a famous Mayan archaeological site. And this is the pyramid here. And this was dedicated to Kukulkan, who was an important Mayan god. He was a serpent with wings. And this pyramid was the site of a lot of star observation. And so we have someone painting here the monarch butterfly on this part, And then the bottom part of the butterfly is actually a swallowtail. And you'll see the swallowtail yellow ones on the other side of the mural. And this is really kind of a composite of two different butterflies that you'll see floating through the mission. And butterflies are often a symbol of migration and also a symbol of transformation. And if we look at the top of this pyramid, you can see these DNA strands. They're kind of reaching all the way up into the heavens. So these DNA strands are connecting both the earth all the way up into the heavens. Now we're going to look at the other side of the building. This is the treat side. And let's go in and look at this beautiful tree. And this is known as Tree Woman. And she is a symbol of all of the kids who have taken Procita Eyes classes and have really blossomed as artists and blossomed in their imagination and creativity. So this tree is actually taken from Procita Park. It's an acacia tree. And then we have the fruits and the flowers kind of symbolizing that blossom of all the kids who have benefited from Procita Eyes classes. Then we move across the mural. We see this black eagle here underneath the windows. And the eagle is something that you find on the flag of the United Farm Workers, the UFW. And that was an organization founded by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta to protect the rights of agricultural workers, to make sure they were paid fairly and working under safe conditions, etc. So we have that here. Then we move over to the mural. We have two teens kind of hanging out in Procita Park, which is just across from the mural, right? And having lunch, the music, relaxing. And this is Bernal Hill in the background. So just kind of showcasing the local environment. And then there used to be a creek that ran through Procita Park that was probably filled in the late 1800s, but they have the creek here shown in the mural. And this fun character down here has his name below. His name is Fact Wino. And Fact Wino was one of the characters from San Francisco Mime Troupe. And the San Francisco Mime Troupe is an organization that in the past and today has performed in public parks in San Francisco. And this character appeared in the 1980s, and he liked to make fun of the moral majority and Jerry Falwell for their very conservative religious views. And so he was kind of a favorite character from that time period. Then we're going to move over and look at a little bit more of the mural. We have this woman. This is Nancy Pele Hernandez. She's the director of the Urban Youth Arts Festival here. And then we have little snippets of people enjoying the park, etc.
Nice.
So I like the way we get to meet people of the mission when we experience these murals.
For sure. Yep. It's just filled with a lot of locals. Okay, we're going to move on to our next mural. This one is titled Procita Valley Vision, 1996. And this was done by Susan Cervantes of Procita Eyes, who we talked about at the first mural. And I have the location here. It's on Procita Street at the corner of Alabama Street. So this mural here, I want to just explain something, is that when this mural was being designed in 1996, there were two local teens that were tragically murdered in Procita Park, which is just beside this building. And these are the two teens right here, Sylvia Menendez and Carlos Hernandez. And they were shot and murdered in Procita Park by a man that just had a mental breakdown. And so when this mural was being designed, they wanted to include a message, a memorial to the teens, and also a message about stopping violence in the neighborhood. And so the doors to this community center feature these two teens. And then there's this beautiful pink rose that symbolizes the love that they had for each other. So that's kind of at the door of the mural. And this mural itself is the Procita Center. It's a community center. So they have sports programs for kids, after school tutoring, community meetings, etc. And so this mural, it really features some of those important things in the community. So we looked at the door, first of all, and then in the very middle of the mural, we have this beautiful angel, and she's opening her arms, and inside her arms, she has the family. She has a young baby, the parents, and then the grandparents, and of the family being the center of the community. Then if we look at the top of the mural, we have two kind of sports figures, because again, this is used as a sports center after school. We have a girl playing basketball. She's shooting her basketball right up into this hole. And then we have a guy in his San Francisco Giants uniform hitting the baseball also right into this circle here. And this circle is kind of a symbol of potential. We also have these beautiful peacocks. They are symbols of life and renewal. And notice how the artist tucked in kind of the feathers of the peacock into the bricks of the building. So it kind of all melds really nicely. We go down and look at the other people in the mural. This man here, this character here, and these women wearing the Carnival masks. This is all talking about the celebration of Carnival. And when you think of Carnival, you usually think of Rio de Janeiro or New Orleans. And Carnival normally happens around February or so, but in San Francisco, February is usually pretty cold. And so we have moved our Carnival celebration to the end of May, to Memorial Day weekend. And the very first Carnival parade actually happened around Procita Park, just across from this mural. So, and the Carnival celebration got so big and important that it had to be moved, and it now takes place on Mission Street. And if you have not been to Carnival to see the parade, you're missing out. I think it's one of the best parades in San Francisco. It can last up to 4 or 5 hours, beautiful music and costumes, etc. So those are all representing Carnival in the Mission. And now we're going to go look very closely at this section on the bottom, and this has the message of anti-violence. So in this slide, we can see a man and he's crying, right? And his tears are forming this puddle. And in this puddle, we have a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. in English at the top and then Spanish at the bottom. And the quote says, "At the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love." So we have that here. And then we have the dedication to the two teens, Sylvia Menendez and Carlos Hernandez at the bottom. Then it says stop here. Then we go over to the other side, violence over here. So that's the anti-violence message. We also have these two hands kind of reaching out and helping and supporting each other right here in the middle. And then we have other hands that are being held up like this as a message of stopping the violence in the community. Okay, we're going to move on to our next theme, War and Peace in Central America. And again, it's really important to remember that you had a lot of Central American immigrants coming to the Mission District starting in the 1960s and continuing through the 1990s. And our first mural here has a very long title. Culture contains the seed of resistance that blossoms into the flower of liberation. This is located in Balmy Alley. It was done in 1984, but repainted in 2014 by Miranda Bergman and O'Brien Teal. And so this mural is talking about the Civil War and Revolution in the country of Nicaragua. And so in the very center, we have this corn stalk coming up with this crown at the top, and this is to represent the country of Nicaragua. And this mural is almost like divided into two halves. And again, this is someone's garage. And so we have the two garage doors. And this garage door in this half is really representing peace and prosperity. And then if we look on the other side, that's representing war and oppression. So let's zero in and talk about peace and prosperity a little bit more closely. So here we have some symbols of that. We have a little girl with her mother, and she's holding a book that says Our History in Spanish on it. We have this farmer standing behind his plentiful crops. And we have another farmer in the foreground, sharing his corn with a young child. Then we have this woman, and she's holding up this enormous basket, and it's just filled to the brim with wonderful fruits, right? Showing again a bountiful harvest. And then this beautiful rainbow coming down, connecting to this man singing. And so we have all these symbols of prosperity and peace and life. Life is beautiful when people are in charge of their own destiny. We're going to contrast that with the other side of the mural. We're going to move over here. And here we're seeing what's happening when there's war and oppression going on in the country of Nicaragua. First, we have this little girl. Notice she's holding an empty plate, but she's sitting on this box filled with fruit that says "for export only." Then we jump over to the other side. We have a farmer pouring out grain from his bag at the boot of a soldier right here. And on the bag, it says in Spanish as well, "for export only." We see people holding up photographs of family members who have disappeared during Nicaragua's civil war. And if we move up slowly to the top of the mural, we see other symbols of war and violence, right? We see a rifle here. There's a building in the background that's on fire. And inside the fire, we have these the smoke coming up. And inside the smoke, we have two faces of two soldiers. And notice in this soldier, he has in his eyeglasses the reflection of the American dollar sign. This is a direct connection of United States involvement in the civil wars happening in Central America. And then this other soldier here, this is modeled after the face of Ronald Reagan. And again, Ronald Reagan was the US president during the 1980s, and his government and CIA had many connections to the civil wars happening in Central America. And then kind of bridging these two sides, I want to point out this beautiful white dove, the symbol of peace. And then we have this muralist right at the bottom here, and he's painting out the word resiste, which means resist.
We have a question, Siobhan, in
Yes.
chat. Sandra asks, is the corn spilling from bullet holes in the bag?
Yes, if you kind of go, oops, sorry, we'll go back. Let's see, I don't think you can see that here. But yes, you see kind of very darkly, there's these black holes. And when you actually go up to the mural, they are 3D holes. And we have the grain coming out of the bag.
Great
Thank you for that.
observation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great observation. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to our next mural. This is called Indigenous Beauty, and it was originally painted in 1984. But the mural was redone in 1990 and renamed Indigenous Eyes, War or Peace. And the mural you're seeing right now is what you will see today in Balmy Alley, but I want to show you what it looked like originally. This is the original mural. So the frame is the same, but this is someone's garage door. And about 6 years after the mural was painted, a car was coming down Balmy Alley and crashed into these doors. And so the doors had to be replaced. And so the original muralist was no longer able to replace the exact doors. So Susan Cervantes, who we've talked about from Procita Eyes, redid the doors, and she simplified them. And she wanted to make a statement about the civil war happening in Nicaragua. And so she chose a photograph of a 4-year-old Nicaraguan girl whose family members who had died in Nicaragua's civil war. And she chose, excuse me, to picture these child's eyes. And if we look carefully inside the eyes of this child, we'll see the symbols of war and peace. So we're going to go a little bit closer. So if you take a look at this one, if you look carefully, you can see there's a skeleton and he's wearing a military outfit. If you look very carefully, he's holding a rifle here. So this is the symbol of war. And then we're going to move across the mural. And this side, you can see a white dove, a symbol of peace. And it's a little hard to see, but this is actually a question mark. And it's saying war or peace, almost like offering a question to us, right? You choose what you want it to be. The next murals we're going to look at, there's 2 memorial murals. And these also both are located in Balmy Alley. The first mural here is a tribute to Archbishop Romero. And this was done by the artist Jamie Morgan. And Oscar Romero is pictured twice in the mural. He's pictured here and then also here as well. And Oscar Romero was a Salvadoran priest, and he used his position as a priest to speak out against the abuses happening in El Salvador during their civil war. So speaking out against injustice, against violence, against the disappearances and assassinations of regular Salvadorans. And unfortunately for speaking out, he himself was murdered in 1980, and he was shot and killed while in the middle of saying Mass. And if you want to learn more about his story, you can watch the movie Romero that came out in 1989 with Raul Julia. That tells more of his story. So let's look here. We have a picture of Archbishop Romero, and notice he's surrounded by his parishioners here. And then we have the church in the background. And then we have these two giant hands. And this is if Romero is asking Salvadorans to put their country back together after the Civil War was over, and kind of roll up their sleeves and use his teachings to kind of repair the country and to move forward. Another interesting thing about this mural is we have these 3D plywood cutouts. So if we go a little bit closer, you can see right here, these are actually made of wood, and they are hammered onto the mural, and they're different little symbols, and they're modeled after something called milagros, which are little tiny, maybe the size of a quarter, little metal medallions or charms that you'll find used in Salvadoran art. But instead of using metal, the artist used plywood here. And they're different symbols of things. We see here, this is an olive branch, right? A symbol of peace. There's a dove, which is also used as a symbol of peace. We can move over. We have this butterfly, which we've seen before, a symbol of migration and transformation. And now I kind of want us to look inside this little square, and we're going to look at that in the next part of the next frame so we can discuss what's going on there more closely. So first we have a photograph of Father Romero, and these are those little milagros, the little metal charms and medallions that you'll find in Salvadoran art. But if we look closely here, this is the second image we see of Father Romero, and notice that he's holding up this communion host, but he's inside the gun scope of a rifle, which is a direct connection to his assassination. And then this milagro that we've seen down here, this plywood cutout, is actually the symbol of Balmiali, and it's a heart, but the heart is made up of two paint cans. We have the red paint, the blue paint, and then it's surrounded by these paint brushes.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful mural.
Yeah, and I think that figure of him in the crosshairs, it's got the double meaning because it's a cross of the church, but it's also what was used to kill him.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful image.
Very powerful image, yes.
And that was such a major turning point, for the FMLN and for the exodus of people leaving El Salvador, and many of them ending up right here in San Francisco.
Right.
We were the hub. I think we still are the hub. I think we are one of the major points of entry for the Salvadoran people still.
You're right. Yep. Yeah, it was a really important moment, and it did lead to a lot of people fleeing that country, fleeing the violence.
Yeah. There's a group of faculty and other people from the University of San Francisco that are Jesuits that go every year to El Salvador, and they meet with the people there and they get updates on what's happening, and they do that in honor of the Archbishop.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And so now we're going to move on to our next mural. This is a tribute to Father Richard Purcell, painted in 2011 by Laura Campos. And we have this here, this is a photograph of Father Purcell, and we have the dedication at the very top of this mural. It says, "In loving memory, Father Richard Purcell, love and compassion, amor y compasión." And this mural is really telling the story of Father Purcell. And interestingly, it's also divided into two sections. We have this orange section over here on the right, and then looks like a lavender section on the left. And so let's talk about the orange section first. So Father Purcell was born in Montana and became a Franciscan priest. And he spent his early ministry working with Native Americans in Arizona on reservations. And so this orange section is all talking about his early work on the reservations. We have symbols of that, right? We have kind of this desert scape you'll see with a coyote howling on this hill, the cactus trees, a whitewashed church. And then we have one of the images of Father Purcell holding Native American pottery, again with kind of that desert scape image. And so this was his early ministry. But Father Purcell moved to San Francisco in 1989, and he moved to San Francisco so that he could be with his brother Marty, who was very ill with AIDS, and he wanted to help his brother through his final months. So unfortunately, his brother Marty passed away soon after from AIDS, and instead of returning to Arizona, Father Purcell decided to stay in San Francisco, and he would set up a new ministry. And this new ministry would be a hospice care for homeless people who had AIDS or other terminal diseases. And so this section here talks about his San Francisco time. And, oops, sorry. Let's go in here. And I know it's hard to see, but this is the hospice building that was set up in the mission. And it says at the top, Marty's Place. So he named his hospice after his brother. So this is the hospice building. Then we have different symbols. We have Bernal Hill in the background and different symbols of San Francisco. Unfortunately, Father Purcell passed away in 2011 from ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, and this mural was done as a memorial to him and his life's work. I want to focus in on this kind of icon in the very center of the mural. This is known as the Tree of Life, or in many cultures, it's also called the Tree of Knowledge or the Sacred Tree, and you'll find in a lot of different cultures across the ages. And it has a lot of different symbols. It could be a symbol of your family genealogy or transformation. But in this case, I think it's a symbol actually of the interconnectedness of everything. So notice we have kind of this body that's been buried in the ground, but the tree is getting kind of sustenance or nutrition from this body and growing up into this beautiful solid tree trunk with Father Purcell's image here. And then from the tree trunk, we have these branches coming up into the sky. So it's almost like everything is connected, life and death. And we even have this leaf here, which is a kind of a new leaf, which is a symbol of future potential. And I want to go in a little bit and talk about, there's some symbols, right, in this tree, right? We talked about the leaf, a symbol of new potential. The butterfly, a symbol of transformation and migration. We have an owl, a symbol of wisdom. And then this heart, a symbol of compassion. Moving on to our next theme is Latino pride and history. We have this mural here. It's the golden age of Mexican cinema, done by 6 different artists. And this mural is also located in Balmy Alley. And this mural is really paying tribute to Mexico's film industry. And Mexico had a very important, prolific film industry starting in the 1920s through about the 1960s. And it became the center of all films throughout Latin America. And so this is paying tribute to that time. So we have these film strips. And inside the film strips, we have different famous Mexican actors and actresses. And I'm going to highlight a few of them for you. So this first figure here, his name is El Tinton, and he was known for his kind of fancy zoot suits, and he was a triple threat. He was a comedian, a singer, and an actor, and liked to mix English and Spanish in a lot of his films. Next to him, this woman here is Maria Felix. She was considered one of the most important Mexican actresses of the 30s and 40s. She had kind of a tough woman image. And Doña Diabla was the name of one of her most famous films. Notice kind of a fun detail in this mural. This is actually the doorway into someone's garage, and this is the doorknob here, but the artist had to kind of meld the doorknob into the mural. So the doorknob is kind of replicated and meant to be like a headband. We look at the top of the mural. We have another actress, Dolores Del Rio. She was considered a great Mexican beauty and often portrayed the country girl. You see her here with braids. She's holding her pig. And this is her again, with a basket of flowers on her back. And she had a career, a very well-known career, and came to Hollywood and had a famous romance with the director Orson Welles. And finally, I want to point out this man, Cantinflas, probably the most famous and well-known Mexican actor of all time. He was known for his physical expressiveness, kind of like the Jerry Lewis of Mexico. He also had a really important Hollywood career and starred with David Niven in Around the World in 80 Days.
Also knew how to wear a hat.
Sorry?
He knew how to wear a hat. So I admired him.
Yeah, a man who knew how to wear a hat, and we'll see that. And here's some just black and white photos. Here's the hat again, right? Of these four actors that I spoke about.
And Cantinflas was very loyal to Mexico because Hollywood made attempts to bring him here, lure him to the United States movie industry. And, you know, I mean, he would have done very well, but he stuck to his guns and he goes, no, soy Mexicano. And he remained, you know, in Mexico and thrived there in his film career.
Yes, yeah, he had a huge career. Probably, I'd say one of the most well-known Mexican actors of all time. So it's nice to see him in that mural. Now we're going to move on to our last category, contemporary social concerns. And this first mural is called Enrique's Journey, also, located in Balmy Alley. And this mural talks about a young boy named Enrique. And this is the mural is based loosely on a book with the same title. And Enrique, the story of Enrique was that he was a 16-year-old boy who had been left back in Honduras by his mother when he was 5. And his mother promised that she would return to bring him to the United States with her. But 11 years goes by, he's 16, he has still never seen his mother again. So he's really desperate to see his mother. So he sets out alone on foot to make his way to the United States. And so Enrique's journey is tracing kind of his story and his kind of harrowing at times journey to make it to the United States. And this mural is really speaking about the current issue of unaccompanied minors from Central America immigrating into the United States. And so I want to just point out some of the figures in the mural. This is representing Enrique as a young child, kind of before he immigrated, footloose and fancy-free. And then I want to point out, and this part in the background, you see there's these trains. And this is talking about one of the most difficult parts of making his way from Honduras to the United States was riding on top of these trains in Mexico, where it's quite a dangerous thing, not only riding on top of a speeding train, but also having to evade bandits and the police as well. And notice he's standing here on a boxcar here in the foreground of the mural. So that's kind of talking about that part of the journey. And we're going to move across the mural. This woman is almost, Enrique said he felt like he had a guardian angel watching over him on his journey. And then we have this fence, and this is representing Mexico on this side and the United States on this side. And if we look in the background, we have these scary skeletons. and we have ICE for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, right? FIR, La Migra is the name for immigration officials in Spanish, and unjust immigration policies. We move across the mural. Again, on the other side of the fence, we have Uncle Sam kind of with this almost strange or apathetic look on his face, holding this crying baby. But then we have this woman kind of showing her compassion, welcoming the baby and welcoming the newcomer to the United States. Then on the bottom of the mural, we have people who have immigrated to the United States and just different symbols of San Francisco in the background. And this is just, if you haven't read this book, it's a great summer read, Enrique's Journey. And this is a photograph from the book showing kind of that difficult part of the journey, riding on top of the trains. And then I want to talk about the last two murals. This is the Mission Makeover mural. And this mural went up in 2012 by Lucia Gonzalez Ippolito. And this mural is talking about gentrification in the Mission District. So Lucia Gonzalez Ippolito grew up in the Mission. She's in her early 30s now, but growing up in the Mission in the 80s and 90s, the Mission was kind of more of a place. It was a close-knit community, a lot of Latino families, a lot of working class families, immigrant families, much more of a Spanish-speaking neighborhood. But over time, especially due to kind of the computer industry, software, social media, et cetera, San Francisco became a city with a lot more wealth and money, and the Mission became kind of a central focus for people with a lot more money to move in, and a lot of long-term residents were forced to leave the Mission because they were being foreclosed upon or their rents were being raised, so it was no longer the affordable place that it used to be. So this mural is talking about that idea of gentrification and change in the Mission.
Oh,
If you get the chance to see this mural, you could stand in front of it for an hour. There's a lot of really fun jokes and play on words. So if you get a chance to go to Balmy, really spend some time with this one. But here in the corner, we have two women, and they have their Day of the Dead face painting here, right? The Day of the Dead is an important holiday that there's a procession and a altar display that takes place here in the Mission. Then we have these three chimpanzees, and they're dressed in these fancy tuxedos, but they have the speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil, almost as if they are kind of gaining their wealth, but not really paying attention to kind of the effects that it's having around them. Other symbols of that wealth and change, we have the New York Stock Exchange, kind of this skeleton here. Notice he's kind of unplugged here at the bottom, typing on a computer with the logo for Facebook. And we have this pile of cash coming down, so kind of representing all the influx of money coming in. We're moving to the other side, a foreclosure sign. It's a little hard to see, but this sign says Luxury Hipster Community. And then we have these security forces forcing out Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, representing local people from the Mission District who are being forced out because of the increasing rents. And it's talking about, the muralist said this talks about displacement of working class families, not only in San Francisco, but on a national level. Jump down to the bottom of this mural. We have the 48 bus, which is the bus that goes down 24th Street. And I know it's a little hard to see, but we have the muralist here in the back. And this is her father who assisted her on the mural, sitting in front of her in the bus. It's also a little hard to see, but there's a family leaving their home, and it says eviction notice in the window. And then we have these police officers who are arresting two local kids. And one of the kids has a bag of Skittles coming out of his pocket. And that's a reference to the murder of Trayvon Martin, which happened the same year that this mural was painted in 2012. This is the artist's dog, right? Who got to be included in the mural. We're going to skip over to the other section. We have kind of these younger people here. Everyone's on their cell phone. This is talking about kind of the young techies moving in with a lot more money. I know it's hard to see, but this says for sale $51 million. Kind of people enjoying their Starbucks coffee, how the mural is, the Mission has changed over time. And then we have this homeless person sleeping on this box of Brillo pads. And that's an homage to a series of work done by Andy Warhol. And this homeless person represents kind of the struggle of the homelessness in San Francisco, but also nationally. And we're going to look at our final mural here, also located in Balmy Alley, called Women of the Resistance, completed in 2018, also done by the same artist as Mission Makeover mural, Lucia Gonzalez Ippolito. And this mural here is paying tribute to female activists. And so let's see here. We have at the bottom part is the female activists. And then the top part are the forces that the women and girls are fighting against. So let's focus on the top part and then we'll go down to the bottom part. So if you'll notice here, all of these forces the women are fighting against are represented by these gray suits. And the gray suits have these hands and they have strings coming down as if they are the puppeteers controlling society. But notice that the women below them are pulling the strings of the puppeteers and in some cases cutting the strings kind of to wrest or to gain control themselves from these forces. And some of these forces are the arms industry, arms manufacturers. We have Nasty, which is supposed to be Nestle, the plastic water bottles, right? We see our former president here, kind of the corporate media wearing his tie, fake news. This says military on the top. This is the US Treasury, so fighting against government economic policy. This is arms manufacturers or bomb manufacturers, pharmaceuticals, fossil fuels, and this one is real estate speculation. So we have kind of the women fighting against some of these forces. And then on the bottom, we have the women, and they're divided into 3 different levels. So the first level here, the first row, are younger women and girls in their teens and 20s. The next one here, women in their 30s and 40s. And the final row are women in their 50s and above. But notice that there's a connection between the older and the younger generations. See how they have their hands on the shoulders of the people coming after them, kind of showing support for that activist spirit through the generations. And let's, there are 38 different women here, and I would love to talk about all, but I'm just going to highlight a few. So this girl, she's a 15-year-old girl. She lives in Flint, Michigan. Her name is Marika Penny, and she is known as Little Miss Flint. And ever since she was 10, she has been fighting for clean water rights for the residents of Flint. And notice she has a water drop on her t-shirt. Many people recognize this woman here. This is Malala Yousafzai, and she was the youngest winner of the Nobel Peace Prize when she was 15 years old back in 2014. And she actually is a women's education activist, and she survived an assassination attempt by the Taliban in her home country of Pakistan. This is Alicia Garza, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter in 2013, and an activist based in Oakland. Sorry, missing my pointer. And this woman here, this is Flores Whitebull. She is a Native American from the Standing Rock Dakota tribe, and she is based in South Dakota. And she was one of the tribe members who led the resistance against the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline back in 2016. This is Tarana Burke, one of the founders, or she was the founder of the Me Too movement, which fights against sexual violence and harassment of women and girls. And she was one of the winners of Time Magazine's Person of the Year. And then finally, this woman here, this is Judy Brady. She's a local San Francisco resident and one of the co-owners of this property. She passed away in 2017, but she herself used a wheelchair, and she was a disability rights activist, as well as fought for environmental justice and for women's health care. And this is the artist herself standing in front of the mural. And that kind of brings us to the end of my presentation. And I hope that you've seen that these murals, are transmitting messages about struggle and hardship, but also about beauty and celebration. And that, these murals really play a powerful role in public life. They can teach, they record, entertain, explain, validate, and inspire us, hopefully, to work together to improve the world around us and make it better for future generations. And these are the photo credits for my presentation. And I think now we will have a chance to open it up to questions and comments.
Yeah, so first of all, Siobhan, I just want to say thank you so much. This is a great presentation. And I mean, the most important question I have is when is your next in-person walking tour?
My, excuse me, next in-person tour is Saturday, July 9th at 10 a.m.
And if you can go to San Francisco sfcityguides.org and find the Mission Mural Tour. And then Nikki, I know you had a question about the women of the resistance. Is there a guide to the women that are pictured there? And I think Sandra said there is something written, their names are to the side of it, I guess, but it's kind of fading. Is that true?
Yeah, the murals, let me see if I can go.
Go back.
Yeah, I guess I can't go back, but on the side of the mural, it is in golden letters. They're all the names of the activists. I have a list of all the activists and a little biography. So if people want to contact me, I can send them that list. Maybe I can put my email up in the chat if people want to find out more information. That's okay.
Yeah, you know what I'll do, Siobhan? I will put your a link to registering for your tour in the in one of my Friday emails. So those of you who get my Friday emails will get that. And for the and then maybe I'll tell people to get in touch with me and I can put them in touch with you. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Yeah.
Let's see, do we have some other questions? I know there were some good comments. Paco had a number of really great observations about the murals you were showing. A little discussion about Nestle, kind of funny for me because I used to work for them. They were not one of my favorite employers. They laid me off at the end. So say all the nasty things you want about Nestle. Definitely boycott the plastic water bottles.
It was just so fun seeing, so many memories. In fact, what was that famous place? It was owned by a Cuban family right across from Procita Eyes. The record store, Discolandia.
Discolandia. Yes, yeah.
And
yeah, that was like a neighborhood hub for many years. They had live performances and get your tickets there, check out new new groups. Yeah, it was the hub for kind of the center of Latin rock and the Mission. But closed down, I think in 2011 or 2012 or so.
They kept the signs as the gentrifiers are being forced to leave at least the memories, the La Rondalla sign was supposed to stay up, and Dominguez Bakery and La Victoria. Some of the signs remain because they're classic. The St. Francis is still there, fortunately, and they've been there since the 1930s, and they're on right by the Bravo, which used to be the York Theater. I was going to just make one suggestion. If people really enjoyed looking at those images of the old movie stars at Gallardo's restaurant, which is on 18th, if you go into the Gallardo's restaurant, they have beautiful portraits of the old-time Mexican actors, and it's a really fun place to eat. And they're an old established Mexican-American family in the Mission.
Yeah, I'm kind of inspired to check out some of those Mexican movies. The Cantinflas, is that, I'm saying that wrong, right? Cantinflas. I think I want to check that out. And I just feel like all these murals are kind of a gateway to the culture of the Mission, which is, of course, very central to the culture of San Francisco. So thank you very much, Siobhan. We also had Sandra in the audience, who's a brand new city guide who's going to be doing Mission murals. So we're going to have lots of great opportunities to be in person and talk about these murals.
Thank you, Sandra.
Can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Paco wants to know where Gallardo's restaurant is.
It's on 18th, almost like by Harrison, down that end. It's on the corner. So we'll have to look up the address for you. And then, did we mention the book?
No, go ahead and talk about the book, Nikki, and then we'll wrap up after that because I know we're going a
The
little
book is
long.
called Street Art San Francisco, and it's all about the murals in the Mission as well, with tons and tons of pictures. And they had a big event to promote this book at the Academy of Sciences, and that's one of the last events I went to with my son. He was so proud. I was so proud of him because he walked in and all these people went up to him, they knew him. So this is a really, really special book. you know, their new murals going up all the time. There's a special one I want to mention just because we do a rock and roll program here on Monday nights, but they have that rock and roll mural. Where is that? It's like 25th and Alabama.
I think, yeah.
And then there's a San Francisco Giants mural. I really do feel like they need to do a beat LA mural though. You know, it's not just it's nice to be positive about the Giants, but we have to say nasty things about the Dodgers too.
Always.
Well, and how do you mind if I ask, how do you get to paint a mural? In other words, do you pay the city money for a spot on the alley, or who owns it? Who controls it? Who?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, from my understanding is that, you know, if you are the property owner and you are painting or you're financing the mural, then you can choose the content of the mural, as long as I think it's not incredibly offensive. But if it is a mural that is going up on a public building, like a school or a community center, or it's going on a private building, but also uses public funding, then the mural has to go through the San Francisco Arts Commission. And you have to draw up the plans, you know, make sure you have the financing in place, show them what content will be on the mural, and it has to be approved. So if it's getting some public funding or goes in a public building, then it does go through the San Francisco Arts Commission. If it's, you know, your garage and you're paying for it, you can choose what you want to put on it and go from there.
So in Balmy Alley, these are the owners, and they may change murals every 6 months or every 6 years, right? It's totally at their
You know,
discretion.
I think if you live on Balmy Alley, you probably are really aware of the strong history of the murals dating back to the 1970s in that alleyway. So, you know, but it does happen. These are people's garages and they get damaged, or maybe the wood is deteriorating over time. And so, you know, I think, and I've seen murals just go up in the last 2 months since I've been walking through the alley. So there is flux, but, you know, I doubt that a homeowner, you know, the muralist also has some ownership of the property as well. You wouldn't just go and completely tear it down without trying to check in with the artist. There's a lot of respect because there is such a strong collaboration between the homeowner and the artist. But the turnover usually happens because there's damage to the wall or damage to the fence. But a lot of the murals have been up there for decades.
So that was a great question. I do think we kind of have to wrap things up.
Yeah, we have about just a couple more minutes, so I would say.
Yeah, so Siobhan, I want to say just again, thank you so much. You're a wealth of knowledge. It's always fun to talk to you about the murals, and I'm going to have to come on one of your tours. And I want to thank Nikki and Jennifer, our technical moderator, for hosting us with Community Living Campaign. Love doing these programs. We've got many more planned for you, and we'll be back in a couple more weeks with more great art-related subjects. So I'll pass it back to you, Nikki. Again, Siobhan, thank you again for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Ann and Rodney.
And isn't Procita Eyes doing their youth festival coming up July
17th.
17th? Yeah, over at Procita Park. And they do that every year. So if you want to see some of the young kids in action, you know, and put your hands to the brush, that's your opportunity. The store's open. There's the shop on where Procita Park is, and then there's the store and the workshop on 24th Street. And if you go in the back room, you'll see a bird painted up way high on the wall. AJ painted that bird. So it was great to have you all here. Thank you. And CLC loves you. We want to keep bringing you programming like this. I would love to have another session of Procita Eyes, because I mean, murals, that's so powerful. Yeah. So thank you, Rodney. Thank you, Siobhan, and thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks, everybody.
everybody. See you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.